story begins with Lee Seung-chin explaining that human equality is a myth. He ranks his classmates based on their wealth, identifying Hong Taeyong as the richest. Seung-chin works as a part-time delivery worker, noticing the disparity between his situation and that of wealthy students attending tutoring sessions. While working at a convenience store, Seung-chin's friend Park Jin-seok visits. Their conversation seems ordinary, but Jin-seok's demeanor is unusually serious. Later that night, Seung-chin receives a text from Jin-seok thanking him for being a good friend. The next morning, Seung-chin rushes to Jin-seok's house, only to discover that his best friend and Jin-seok's entire family have died by suicide. Seung-chin recalls memories of Jin-seok helping him against bullies and sharing meals. Businessman Hong Hyun-doo and his son Taeyong attend the funeral. Media reports suggest that Hyun-doo's redevelopment plans may have driven Jin-seok's family to suicide. Outside the funeral home, classmate Park Jang-gun assaults Seung-chin over a project dispute, mockingly offering money for each slap. Taeyong notices and attempts to console Seung-chin without realizing the situation. Hyun-doo observes Seung-chin picking up the discarded money and warns Taeyong about associating with people who don't value their time. At his part-time job, Seung-chin works with a new employee, Joo-hee. He advises her to temper her cheerfulness due to customers' typically harsh treatment. That night, Seung-chin's home is raided by landlords over unpaid rent. He exposes his father's failure to pay, causing family conflict. Seung-chin argues with his sister Seung-ga about contributing his savings to the rent, stating he needs to focus on his own future. Meanwhile, Taeyong is caught by his father reading comics that mock the poor, ironically written by Seung-chin's father, Lee Cheol. Hyun-doo expresses fury over Taeyong's lack of interest in the family business and his poorly written report. Taeyong experiences a panic attack after his father leaves. The next day, he encounters an old lady selling supernatural items and purchases a golden spoon. The old lady claims that after eating 3 meals at someone's house with the spoon, Seung-chin can switch lives with them. Seung-chin visits Taeyong's house to submit homework for Jang-gun in exchange for money. Taeyong invites Seung-chin to stay for a meal with other classmates. Despite attempts to humiliate him with cheap cutlery, Seung-chin uses his newly acquired golden spoon, claiming it's a family heirloom. As he eats, the mysterious woman notices something in one of her marbles, depicting that he ate his first meal at someone's house. Seung-chin has a nightmare about his family committing suicide due to poverty, strengthening his resolve to change his fate using the golden spoon. He devises a plan to befriend Taeyong and secure more meals at his house. To make himself useful to Taeyong, Seung-chin researches Hyun-doo's business and helps Taeyong prepare reports. Impressed by the improved work, Hyun-doo's approval prompts Taeyong to invite Seung-chin for dinner again. Although Seung-chin fails to use the golden spoon this time, their arrangement begins to benefit him financially. Taeyong's wealthy friend Yo-jin warns him against associating with Seung-chin. At his part-time job, Seung-chin discusses education and future aspirations with Joo-hee, who reveals she was recently expelled from school. Taeyong delivers an envelope to Seung-chin at work, touching him with the gesture of friendship. In private, Taeyong confides to his driver that he envies Seung-chin's simpler life and misses his mother, keeping her photos hidden. At school, Jang-gun violently assaults Seung-chin for outperforming him academically. This incident further motivates Seung-chin to change his circumstances using the golden spoon. He visits Taeyong's house, requesting a meal in exchange for another report. However, Hyun-doo's presence prevents him from eating immediately. Seung-chin waits and hastily consumes the meal before it's cleared away, embarrassed when Hyun-doo spots him. Disappointed with his behavior, Seung-chin discards the golden spoon. Meanwhile, Hyun-doo confronts Taeyong about seeking help from Seung-chin, threatening to send him back to the United States. Taeyong, traumatized by a past school shooting, begs to stay in Korea. The next day, Taeyong's family fabricates a story accusing Seung-chin of extortion. Despite Seung-chin's protests and his father's pleas for forgiveness, the school sides against him. That night, Seung-chin confronts Taeyong, threatening to expose him with a voice recording. Their argument escalates, resulting in Seung-chin falling into a lake. As Seung-chin drowns, he envisions the golden spoon and becomes determined to change his fate. He swims to shore and retrieves the discarded spoon from the trash. While Taeyong returns to the scene out of guilt, Seung-chin is already at Taeyong's house, asking Hyun-doo for one final meal. Meanwhile, Taeyong, feeling guilty, returns to the lake to check on Seung-chin. Seung-chin eats the meal in front of Hyun-doo, testing the spoon's magic by calling him Oppa. Initially confused when Hyun-doo doesn't respond, Seung-chin is about to leave when Joo-hee, claiming to be Taeyong's fiancé, slaps him for attacking Seung-chin. Both Joo-hee and Hyun-doo address him as Taeyong, confirming the switch has occurred. The police arrive to arrest Taeyong, actually Seung-chin, for pushing Seung-chin into the lake. During questioning, he laughs at how the footage has been misinterpreted. Meanwhile, the real Taeyong wakes up in the hospital as Seungchin, shocked to see Seungchin's mother. Taeyong drops the school violence case against Seungchin in exchange for silence about the incident. Hyundoo orders Monkey to erase evidence of the boys' fight and find who called the police. Now living as Taeyong, Seungchin struggles to navigate his new life in the mansion. He accidentally enters his stepmother Young Sin's room, raising suspicions about his odd behavior. He asks Monkey for a list of all employees and people related to the Hwang family. In his new room, Seungchin discovers the luxurious life of the real Taeyong and notices the number 29 on the spoon, recalling the rule allowing 3 chances to change back. After 1 month, 1 year, and 10 years. At school, Seungchin enjoys his new status but is upset when Joohee ignores him. In the principal's office, he takes blame for past incidents and asks for an investigation into the midterm cheating. He beats up Jang-un for bullying Seungchin's friends. On the rooftop, Joohee warns Taeyong not to cause trouble for Seungchin, touching Seungchin with her defense of his past self. Yeojin reveals that Joohee's actions might be due to guilt over a poor girl's death. Yeojin suddenly kisses Taeyong, leaving him shocked and wondering about their relationship. The real Taeyong adjusts to life as Seungchin, enjoying his mother's cooking and family interactions. On the other hand, Seungchin buys gifts for Seungchin's family, raising Hyundoo's suspicions about his spending habits. During a meal with Hyundoo, Joohee, and her father, Joohee announces she wants to end her engagement to Taeyong. Later, at the convenience store, Seungchin helps Joohee, surprising her with his kindness. They share a moment when Joohee trips and falls into his arms. At home, Joohee's brother attempts to slap her for breaking the engagement, but their father intervenes. Meanwhile, Jang-un is beaten by his father for not making it to the special class, vowing revenge on Seungchin. Seungchin catches his stepmother snooping in his room. He finds the real Taeyong's secret cabinet containing a photo of his biological mother and sketches of Joohee. The next day, Seungchin's father apologizes to himself for being incompetent after his son leaves for school. Seungchin tries to give money to Seungchin's mother, but she refuses and asks him to stop contacting her son. At school, Taeyong confronts Seungchin about the gifts, shocking their classmates. Joohee greets Taeyong, triggering memories of the real Seungchin. Jang-un takes Taeyong to his house, where he and his friends start assaulting him. Taeyong experiences PTSD when Jang-un points a gun at him. Joohee visits her childhood friend Na-ra's tombstone, while Seungchin visits Jin Seok's grave, declaring he's no longer the old poor Seungchin. He receives a call about Taeyong's disappearance and rushes to Jang-un's place. Seungchin arrives at Jang-un's house, surprising everyone with his familiarity of the place. He picks up a gun, loads it with a bullet from his pocket, and points it at Jang-un. To mock him, he challenges Jang-un to kill Taeyong or face death himself. As Jang-un begs for mercy, Seungchin declares he won't show any and pulls the trigger. The episode ends with a loud gunshot. Jang-un is worried about Taeyong shooting him with his father's pistol. Monkey hears a gunshot from outside Jang-un's house. Taeyong visits his father's office and finds a will signed by Hyundoo that removes Taeyong as the heir. Taeyong acts nonchalant when Hyundoo arrives and tells his father he made a mistake. Before leaving, Taeyong asks if Hyundoo really loves him, and his father affirms that he does. The bullet was a blank, and Taeyong fractures Jang-un's hand. At the hospital, Taeyong exposes Jang-un's bullying and threatens to reveal his father's illegal hunting. Taeyong drives Seungchin home and overhears landlords troubling Seungchin's parents about rent. He watches Lee Cheol polish the landlord's shoes for money and tears up. Yeojin visits Jang-un in the hospital, and they plan to destroy Taeyong. Jang-un wonders about Yeojin's motives. Lee Cheol starts working on a redevelopment project, evacuating residents. He finds it difficult to ignore the cries of the residents. Seungchin's mother searches for a new house. Lee Cheol learns that his co-worker, who was following Joohee, lost his daughter 5 years ago. On their shared birthday, Lee Cheol buys a cake for Seungchin, while Taeyong has a grand celebration. Joohee visits Seungchin's house with a gift, surprising his family. Seungchin gets money as a gift from his mother but says her existence is his real gift. At Taeyong's party, he impresses his father with company stocks purchased with his savings. Seungchin accompanies Joohee to Taeyong's party, where he surprisingly plays the piano exactly as Taeyong used to. Young Sin is puzzled by this. Joohee gives Taeyong a letter from an old woman, revealing another condition of the golden spoon. If Seungchin meets his biological parents on his birthday, the spoon's effect will be reversed. Taeyong becomes worried when he can't find Seungchin or Hyundoo. Yeojin takes Seungchin to the same restaurant as Hyundoo, but Taeyong intervenes, hugging his father to prevent a meeting. Young Sin expresses concerns to Hyun-do about Seung-chin's similarities to Taeyong. Hyun-do says that he doesn't care about that as long as the successor can protect his empire. Young Sin calls someone, asking him to return home immediately. Taeyong and Joo-hee search for the old woman who gave her the letter. When Taeyong starts belittling Seung-chin, Joo-hee confesses that she likes him, leaving Taeyong stunned. Monkey witnesses Seung-ga beating up landlords for snooping on her while she was in the shower. Seung-ga thanks Monkey for his help by offering him a free haircut at her salon. Taeyong uses Monkey's help to gather dirt on Seung-chin's landlord, Moo-in. They threaten to expose his illegal activities unless he stops troubling Seung-chin's family. Monkey single-handedly fights Moo-in's men. Later, Moo-in apologizes to Seung-chin's family and offers them rent-free accommodation. Taeyong wonders how much an apartment in one of the big buildings would cost. During a dodgeball match, Taeyong is jealous of Joo-hee and Seung-chin playing together. Yo-jin warns him about Jang-eun's revenge and Taeyong wonders why she's being nice to him. Later, Taeyong waits outside Joo-hee's convenience store and spots Na-ra's father. He saves Joo-hee from an attack by Na-ra's father, who tries to choke her. The man runs away and sobs while looking at Na-ra's photo. Joo-hee explains her guilt over Na-ra's death, believing she's responsible because Na-ra was punished for allegedly stealing Joo-hee's watch. Taeyong reassures her, asking her to stop blaming herself. Joo-hee wonders how someone like Taeyong could be so endearing. Taeyong asks Hyun-do to let him inherit the empire. Hyun-do challenges him to prove how he has changed and is pleased that his plan worked. The next day, Taeyong receives a message from an unknown number claiming to know he's not the real Taeyong. As Seung-chin enters the class with his phone in hand, Taeyong wonders if the text was from him. He calls the number and Joo-hee's phone rings, making him curious about her. Taeyong finds an envelope from the old lady in his notebook, but the letter is missing. Seung-chin's friend Dong Kyung admits to putting the envelope there and gets defensive when Taeyong seems to blame him for the theft. Taeyong speculates that whoever sent the text might have also used the spoon to exchange parents. He suspects Joo-hee might have replaced her life with Na-ra's. When the class is empty, Taeyong searches for Joo-hee's phone. Meanwhile, Yo-jin confronts Joo-hee about flirting with both Seung-chin and Taeyong. Joo-hee insists she only likes Seung-chin, and Yo-jin reveals her intention to pursue Taeyong. Joo-hee catches Taeyong trying to access her phone. He apologizes for snooping and learns it was Joo-hee's father who called her earlier. They discuss the text, while Seung-chin grows concerned about their absence from the science lab. During break, Seung-chin warns Taeyong to stay away from Joo-hee. Young Sin joins Taeyong during his meal, urging him to focus on studies instead of the shareholders' meeting. Taeyong dismissively thanks her and shocks everyone by asking for coffee in his room, which is unusual for him. Joo-hee calls Taeyong, and they go to the police station where Na-ra's father has been caught for attacking Joo-hee. They learn that Yo-jin reported him. Taeyong confronts Yo-jin, suspecting she's actually Na-ra who used the golden spoon to change her life. Yo-jin remains unfazed by his questions about Na-ra. Taeyong, Joo-hee, Yo-jin, Seung-chin, and other classmates all receive the same mysterious text. Jang-eun claims responsibility, saying it was a prank. Seung-chin yells at Jang-eun, who remains calm in class. Jang-eun inquires about the golden spoon, and Seung-chin realizes he doesn't know its current location. At home, Seung-chin searches for the spoon, hoping to find it and buy his mother a gold ring. He wonders if he left it at Taeyong's house. Meanwhile, Taeyong checks his spoon and realizes he has 7 more days left for his first chance to exchange his life back with Seung-chin. Taeyong looks at an apartment to buy, imagining living there with his real family. In his dream, he sees the family calling the real Seung-chin back. He decides to purchase the property, but Young Sin's private investigator photographs him. Lee Cheol, working as a redevelopment evacuator, is beaten by his boss for protecting residents instead of evicting them. Taeyong sees him and questions why Lee Cheol only started working now, not years ago when his family needed it most. Lee Cheol, confused by Taeyong's words, asks him to keep it a secret from Seung-chin. Seung-chin visits Taeyong's house, making himself comfortable. Joo-hee has a meal with Taeyong, thanking him for his help. She mentions the school shooting incident from years ago. When Taeyong asks for coffee, Joo-hee is alarmed because he isn't a coffee person. At Taeyong's house, Seung-chin declines coffee and asks for elderberry tea instead, shocking Young Sin because real Taeyong doesn't like coffee. Taeyong pats Joo-hee on the head, flustering her. She asks to end their engagement, but Taeyong requests they continue for a little longer. Young Sin asks Seung-chin to play the piano, noticing he makes the same mistakes as Taeyong. When she invites him for dinner, he declines, surprising her as he had already eaten 2 meals at the house. Seung-chin explores Taeyong's bedroom, finding drawings of Joo-hee and the golden spoon. As he's about to take the spoon, Taeyong rushes to stop him. Taeyong gives Seung-chin some medicines, claiming they're supplements. On his way out, Seung-chin encounters Hyun-doo and has a panic attack. He calls Lee Cheol, who rushes to help him. Seung-chin collapses on a bridge, and Lee Cheol helps him focus on his breathing to calm down. Young Sin informs Hyun-doo about Seung-chin's similarities to Taeyong and Taeyong's apartment purchase. Hyun-doo questions Monkey about Taeyong's involvement with Seung-chin, but Monkey doesn't reveal anything. The next day, Jang-un scolds Yo-jin for making him look foolish about the text prank. Yo-jin asks him to be patient, promising his time to destroy Taeyong will come. A flashback reveals that Yo-jin, who is actually Na-ra, filmed Taeyong and Seung-chin's fight and called the police. She watches her biological father being taken away. Monkey visits Seung-da's salon, attempting to convince her to rent the apartment Taeyong purchased. Jun-tae, Young-jin's brother, meets Taeyong. After a meal, Jun-tae chokes Taeyong as a warning, leaving him shocked. Lee Cheol returns home with takeout, happy that his family can finally eat to their fullest. Taeyong, scared after the encounter with Jun-tae, runs to Seung-chin's house and watches the family enjoy their meal. Seung-ga mentions the apartment, but Seung-chin declines upon hearing Monkey's name. Taeyong is upset seeing the family's happiness despite their lack of money. Taeyong realizes it's the day he can return to his old life as Seung-chin. Seung-chin calls Taeyong, asking him to stop meddling in his personal life and trying to move his family into the apartment. The two argue about money and values, with Seung-chin real Taeyong claiming he would never trade his parents for money. Suddenly, they learn that Lee Cheol has been in a brutal accident. Taeyong, Seung-chin, and Joo-hee rush to the hospital. Taeyong accidentally addresses Lee Cheol as Appa, shocking Hyun-doo who overhears. On the other hand, Yo-jin opening a locker to store the letters she found at Taeyong's birthday party. Inside the locker, she finds another golden spoon. A flashback shows Na-ra being assaulted by her father as a child and later living in Yo-jin's house. After encountering the old lady, Na-ra decides to exchange her life with Yo-jin's. It's revealed that Yo-jin had leukemia and dies soon after Na-ra takes over her life. After calling the wrong father dad, Seung-chin stammers out a flimsy excuse to CEO Hong, just barely diffusing the situation. He stays by Dad's side on the pretext of boosting Dashin Group's image, but his heart breaks once when Dad reaches out to hold Taeyong's hand instead and breaks yet again when Dad suddenly coughs up blood. Overwhelmed by guilt and regret, Seung-chin believes that this must be his punishment for swapping lives and forsaking his family. He seeks out the peddler grandma, who rejuvenates his spoon and gives him the chance to switch back. He just has to eat one meal at his original house. Seung-ga returns home to catch him eating straight out of the rice cooker, and to Seung-chin's tearful relief, she calls him by his real name. Unfortunately, more problems arise for Seung-chin's family. Lee Cheol sustained his injuries by falling off a building and onto the subcontractor's car, which means the family finds themselves even further in debt when Dad's jerk of a boss demands an exorbitant car repair fee. Swallowing his pride, Seung-chin goes to Dashin Group and humbly asks CEO Hong to lend him the money. Of course, it doesn't work, since CEO Hong sneers that Seung-chin doesn't have any collateral worth the loan, not even his life. Sweetheart Joo-hee sells her luxury bags to raise money for Seung-chin, but she's one step too late. Yo-jin makes it to him first, offering him a check and slyly embracing him in a hug in full view of Joo-hee. She's so cunning. 1 year later, everyone graduated high school and moved on to prestigious universities, except for Seung-chin, who has to retake his entrance exams. In the meantime, he's back to working odd jobs, which includes being at Yo-jin's beck and call. That's her price for the loan she gave him. Seung-chin's entire family now works at Yo-jin's house, serving the snobbish father-daughter pair. They're currently living in the dingy basement room that Na-ra used to occupy, and Yo-jin isn't hesitant about exposing Seung-chin's humiliating living situation in front of Joo-hee. Except that has the complete opposite effect from what Yo-jin expected, since Seung-chin overhears and decides to own up to his circumstances. He candidly admits that he hid the embarrassing truth from Joo-hee because he likes her. He said it in front of both Taeyong and Yo-jin, too. Seung-chin leaves and Joo-hee runs out after him to confess that she likes him back, and the two embrace in a tearful hug. Yo-jin witnesses this heartfelt scene, which is a nice parallel to the hug 1 year ago, except this time, it's with the right person, and it's genuine. To no one's surprise, Yo-jin refuses to take this lying down. Having figured out that Seung-chin switched back to his original place, she concocts yet another scheme. One that has her confronting Seung-chin with his golden spoon and throwing it into the lake. Of course, it's a fake out, just to test if Seung-chin truly wants to stay in poverty as he claims. His panicked reaction clearly says otherwise, and Yo-jin declares that he needs to switch again so that she can marry him as Taeyong and take over Daishin Group. Seung-chin may be inundated with problem after problem, but that doesn't stop him from reaching out to Joo-hee in her time of need. When he finds out that her father's company is facing a financial crisis due to bad decisions made by his incompetent sons, he takes her out on a cute date to get her mind off the situation. As the date winds down, Joo-hee takes Seung-chin to the church that she often goes to whenever she needs to clear her mind. They reaffirm their support and gratitude for each other, and Seung-chin vows to hang in there for her sake. To everyone's chagrin, that doesn't last very long. In order to pressure Seung-chin into swapping lives, Yo-jin convinces her father to chase Seung-chin's family out of the house and demand they repay their debt. At his wit's end, Seung-chin invests a large sum of money in stocks, and just as one might wonder why he didn't do this before, the shares he bought plummet drastically in value. There goes Seung-chin's money as well as the last of his hope. Seung-chin isn't the only one facing major upheaval, his spoon counterpart is too. Taeyong's traumatic memories are beginning to resurface, but every single article about the school shooting has been deleted off search portals. With Monkey's help, Taeyong manages to sneak into stepmom's room, where he finds a whole binder full of newspaper clippings. The reports say the culprit committed suicide, but Taeyong remembers witnessing him getting shot, so who killed him, and why was it covered up? It turns out the reporter worked at UBS, the company owned by Joo-hee's father, CEO Na, before going missing. It's the only lead Taeyong has, so he follows up on it by paying a visit to CEO Na and asking him about the case. To Taeyong's shock, CEO Na accuses him of being the murderer, and he covered it up as a favor to CEO Hong. CEO Na says he has something more to tell him, and we don't get to hear what it is, but it sends Taeyong running out of the house in a panic. That night, Joo-hee returns home to a dark house and a blood-stained floor. Her father is dead. Then Taeyong jerks awake. It was just a nightmare, or was it? CEO Hong is in the room as well, and he reveals that CEO Na was indeed found dead the previous night. The fearful look in Taeyong's eyes is evident. Taeyong can't remember anything, which isn't helped by CEO Hong's firm declarations that Taeyong was brought home drunk out of his mind, and that he never went to CEO Na's house, under the impression that his father is covering up his crimes to save the company's reputation. Taeyong is left to spiral deeper into the fear that he's a murderer. Seung-chin and Joo-hee meet at the church again, where Seung-chin prays for Joo-hee to recognize him even if he appeared in front of her as someone else. Smiling, she tells him that she always will, and Seung-chin pulls her into a kiss. When they break apart, she pulls him back in for another kiss, except she's smiling and he isn't. This is goodbye. The next morning, Seung-chin sprints straight into Taeyong's house with a singular goal in mind. Grabbing a bowl of rice right out of the housekeeper's hands, he gulps it down frantically before anyone can stop him. And just like that, he's back to being the rich young master again. But the question is, will this time be any different from before? Lee Seung-chin becoming Hong Taeyong once again. Hong Hyun-do efficiently removes all evidence of Taeyong's meeting with Na Sang-guk, while Seung-chin remains unaware, and has to evade when Hyun-do mentions their earlier discussion. As Hyun-do vows to protect his son, Young Sin attempts to uncover the events before Taeyong's drunken return. Meanwhile, a maid burns Taeyong's clothes from the previous night. Seung-chin reflects on the old lady's words while observing the 10-year period that has commenced on the spoon. During this time, Hyun-do scolds Monkey for not being with Taeyong when the incident occurred. The following day at Na Sang-guk's funeral, Seung-chin tries to console Joo-hee, but she fails to recognize him and rushes to Taeyong upon his arrival. An argument between Joo-hee's brothers disrupts the service, revealing that the eldest brother has sold his shares to Jun-tae. Upon hearing this, Seung-chin leaves to investigate but is intercepted by CEO, reminding him of the past year spent in his house. Seung-chin then files a complaint against his company with the National Tax Service, causing trouble and angering Yo-jin. He subtly assists his family, bringing them happier days. When Monkey inquires about his reasons for always helping Seung-chin's family, he laughs and claims he is Hong Taeyong only to help Lee Seung-chin, dismissing it as a joke. The next day, Seung-chin seeks out Jun-tae's financial backer, Alex Boo, who aided in purchasing the Na company shares from Joo-hee's brother. He successfully persuades Alex to switch allegiance from Jun-tae to himself, throwing his uncle into a frenzy. When Hyun-do questions his motives, Seung-chin as Taeyong explains that it's because he is a true family member, unlike Jun-tae. He adds that purchasing the shares now would be inappropriate due to President Na's recent death, potentially damaging the Daishin Group's image. Impressed by this reasoning, Hyun-do approves, while Young Sin, who witnesses everything, relays the information to Jun-Ti. She informs him of Taeyong's strange behavior for the second time, prompting Jun-Ti to ponder and connect the dots between the night of his drunken return and President Na's death. The following day, Joo-hee attempts to enlist Hyun-doo's help in uncovering the truth about her father's death, but is unsuccessful. Meanwhile, Jun-Ti discovers that the surveillance footage from the night of Taeyong's drunken return has been tampered with. The next day, Joo-hee discusses the inheritance with her brothers, bringing Taeyong as Seung-chin along. He examines the documents her brothers have given her and advises against signing them, revealing that they have been manipulated. He suggests she hire a better lawyer. As they leave, Taeyong notices a painting and recognizes it as an original piece by a renowned artist. This impresses Alex Boo, who reveals that he hung the painting and that Taeyong is the first to recognize it. Alex then gives him some money, impressed by his attitude. Elsewhere, Seung-chin visits his sister with Monkey and discreetly provides his contact information so she can ask for his help anytime. Park Jang-un overhears her conversation with her mother about meeting outside and relays this information to Yeon-jin, who advises her father to seek forgiveness from Seung-chin's mother to avoid chaos. Meanwhile, Taeyong brings side dishes to Joo-hee and kisses her, but she pushes him away. At that moment, the doorbell rings and Seung-chin arrives, proceeding to eat the food. He informs Joo-hee about her brother's actions and reveals that her father had taken a private loan that will now fall on her. Stunned by this revelation, Joo-hee leaves, but Seung-chin follows to apologize and inform her that the house she's living in will soon be auctioned off. Still in shock, she asks him to leave, unable to express gratitude for the information he has shared. After this, we see Taeyong and Lee Cheol returning to witness CEO begging for forgiveness from Jin Sun-hai while confessing his previous actions, like proposing 100 million won to her for spending one night with him. This shocks Lee Cheol, while an enraged Taeyong punches CEO for his words. As Lee Cheol moves to strike him as well, CEO suddenly offers to pay him 100 million won, causing Lee Cheol to hesitate. CEO seizes this opportunity to escape, but Taeyong takes control of the driver's seat and drives him away, intending to kill him. Meanwhile, Seung-chin is brought to meet Alex by Hyun-doo but leaves the meeting when Seung-ga informs him of the situation. He rushes to resolve the issue while warning Taeyong of the potential problems this could create. However, Taeyong struggles to accept the situation. Elsewhere, Lee Cheol and Sun-hai share an emotional moment. Jun-Ti discovers an important theory that could alter Seung-chin's fate, while Hyun-doo makes plans with Alex to teach his son a lesson. Later that day, Young-Ti boasts to Seung-chin about reclaiming his deal with Alex while subtly hinting at his involvement in President Na's murder. Seung-chin is confused by these implications. Later that night, suddenly the police arrive and arrest him for President Na's murder. Seung-chin, realizing that the people who have arrested him aren't actually police officers, but kidnappers. He attempts to escape but fails until the cloth covering his head is removed, and he finds himself in a spotlight surrounded by people. Jun-Ti emerges from the crowd and introduces Taeyong to a group known as Amicus. This group consists of young, wealthy individuals who socialize while also protecting cultural assets and engaging in volunteer work as a hobby. Seung-chin tries to blend in until Yo-jin arrives and explains the situation to him. Meanwhile, Taeyong visits Joo-hee and gives her a taser. Back at the Amicus party, Seung-chin attempts to leave when Jun-Ti hands him a drugged drink. Jun-Ti then drags Seung-chin to a corner and tries to uncover information about President Na's murder, but receives no answer except for Seung-chin's confession of being Lee Seung-chin. Yo-jin overhears this conversation and concludes that Taeyong must have been involved in President Na's death. Seung-chin has the same thought and dreams of Taeyong killing Joo-hee. He then tries to understand Taeyong's character and decides to check on him. Seung-chin soon concludes that Taeyong is not the type of person capable of killing someone. Meanwhile, Yo-jin informs Hyun-doo about the events at the Amicus party and tells him that she knows about President Na's murder connection with Taeyong and she can protect him if Hyun-doo arranges her engagement to Taeyong. Hyun-doo scoffs at this idea but becomes furious with Jun-Ti and rushes home to thrash him with a kendo stick. Young-sin tries to intervene until Hyun-doo reminds her that Taeyong is her son, not Jun-Ti, and she should be protecting him. Elsewhere, Joo-hee checks into a hotel and opens a suitcase filled with money, remembering her brother's last words before severing ties with her. Seung-chin joins the Amicus members on a trip to a cultural heritage site, where one of the members tells him about Taeyong's relationship with Jun-Ti. Later, Yo-jin discusses Taeyong's connection to President Na's death with Seung-chin, which startles him. He insists that Taeyong is incapable of harming anyone. She then reminds him to forget about Juhi before he leaves. Taeyong tells Lee Cheol about his decision not to attend college and instead work as a webtoon artist. Lee Cheol, depressed about his injured wrist that leaves him unable to continue as an artist, convinces Taeyong to reconsider and attend college. Young Sin discovers that a maid tried to sell Taeyong's blazer that she was instructed to burn and immediately retrieves it. Juhi is searching for a place to stay when Seungchan asks to meet her. He tells her that Seungchan is not the same person she fell in love with and should keep her distance. This offends her and she leaves, but he catches up and apologizes, offering his help as a friend. Shortly after, she receives a call from her ex-maid who has an important clue for her. The next day during a meeting, Jun-T presents an advertisement that impresses everyone until Seungchan opposes it with reasoning that makes everyone think. Hyun-do sides with Seungchan and tells Jun-T to redo his work. Alex Boo is impressed by Seungchan and praises him in front of Hyun-do, who is displeased with his son's display of empathy. Yo-jin sees Juhi with Taeyong and learns that they are meeting Juhi's ex-maid who knows about Taeyong being the last one to visit President Na. She informs Seungchan, who rushes to find them. He locates them at a traffic intersection and also sees the maid there. However, the maid is hit by a truck as she tries to cross the road, witnessed by all three of them. Juhi doesn't identify the culprit, Taeyong panics, and Seungchan leaves to speak with Hyun-do, but Juhi sees his back. After helping Taeyong, Juhi asks him about her suitcase filled with money, and they realize it has disappeared. Meanwhile, Jun-T arrives at Hyun-do's office with a DNA report confirming Taeyong's involvement in President Na's death. In exchange for the blazer, he demands everything given to Taeyong, including properties and company shares, and for Taeyong to be sent to the USA. Hyun-do is forced to accept these conditions, which greatly angers him. Juhi and Taeyong are disheartened by recent events, but she encourages him to move on. Seeing her like this displeases him, and he becomes further upset upon overhearing his parents discussing Lee Cheol's injury, which is untreated due to lack of funds. This infuriates Taeyong, making him wish to be home Taeyong. At that moment, he receives a job offer from Alex Boo, and another golden spoon is seen in his collection but isn't aware of its power. That night, Seungchan searches for Hyun-do when Jun-T confronts and beats him up, mirroring Hyun-do's earlier actions on Jun-T. During this altercation, scenes revealing Jun-T is the true culprit behind the massacre in the USA flash by. The scene shifts to Juhi checking out of the hotel when she notices Yo-jin carrying a familiar-looking suitcase. She asks to inspect it but is proven wrong. Yo-jin reminds her about the importance of money, recalling childhood memories. Juhi is ashamed but helpless as Yo-jin leaves the hotel and passes the suitcase to a beggar on the street, who opens it to find the hidden money. On the other hand, Hyun-do laughing at the expensive blazer he has just purchased when Seungchan rushes in to change the decision of sending him to the USA. Hyun-do angrily throws papers documenting the losses incurred because of him and informs Seungchan that his decision is final. Seungchan, unable to change the situation, prepares to leave. However, in his luggage, he discovers newspapers covering the massacre and learns that Jun-T studied with Taeyong in the States. He continues preparing to depart, now with a goal in mind. He sends a farewell message to Juhi while seeing his family for the last time. At the airport, Juhi comes to see him off, but as he turns to leave, she remembers that the man she saw at her maid's accident scene was Seungchan. She connects the dots and concludes that he is the culprit who killed her father. She wants to confront him but is held back as Seungchan leaves. Time passes, and the story jumps to 1 month before the 10-year time limit expires. Taeyong, dressed formally, finds a drunk Seungchan sprawled on a sidewalk bench, appearing homeless, and wakes him up. A new Seungchan is revealed, seeming like a spoiled rich brat who knows nothing but how to enjoy life. After this, we see Hong Taeyong sitting for an interview while struggling to get a job in recent days. Having realized that this is another unsuccessful interview, he goes away with the money he has gotten from this interview while the scene shifts to Oh Yo-jin, who is doing well with her company. Elsewhere, Na Juhi is ready to sneak into an amicus party to investigate illegal gambling among the children of conglomerates with her group of journalists. She confirms through Park Jang-gun and Yo-jin that the party will be happening soon and takes Taeyong's help to sneak into the gathering. Yo-jin too makes her way to the party after finding out that Seungchan has come back from the US and is present at the party. She soon finds him trying to hook up with a celebrity and bashes him while telling him to leave with her. He rejects the idea and runs away from her. Elsewhere, Juhi targets a private room where the young conglomerates are playing board games and realizes that this is the place where gambling is happening. She switches on her pen camera and gets the necessary shots. However, upon leaving she notices that her companions have been caught. She tries to run away but finds no way out until Seung-chin pulls her into a tent where he gives her his greetings. He notices that she is on a secret mission and asks her if she still thinks that he is behind her father's death. She is speechless because of the surprise when Taeyong enters and takes her away. But this gets the two caught and pulled outside where Yo-jin takes the pen camera and destroys it. Jun-tae too arrives and wants to teach them a lesson, but Seung-chin intervenes and protects them. However, this makes him Jun-tae's target, who humiliates him in front of everyone before letting the two leave. Later, Yo-jin takes Seung-chin away from her and asks him the reason why he is behaving like this. She then tells him to go back to his original life, but he rejects the idea. She then has him sent to the Hong family house where Hyun-doo and Young-sin are surprised by his getup. Hyun-doo then takes him to his office and tries to find out what happened and tells him that he may have overestimated his son. He then asks him to leave, but Seung-chin turns back and is not ready to continue his silence. The scene then shifts to Joo-hee, who has been trying to investigate her father's death. She has concluded that everyone related to the case is either working for the Dacian group or has been killed. She is not ready to give up on this case, but survival is not easy because of this. She has had to keep it on hold. On the other hand, Taeyong receives another rejection letter but is more worried about Joo-hee. His friend points out that if he were so worried, then why did he break up with her? He then reminds him of Alex Boo, whose offer was rejected by Taeyong years back, which has become a topic of regret for him. The next day, he goes for yet another interview when he gets a call and is made to pick up Seung-chin. Seung-chin shows his delight upon seeing Taeyong and is taken to a local restaurant for lunch. There he shares his dilemma when suddenly a scandal of his with an idol is broadcasted on television, which excites him. On the other hand, Young-sin is giving a piano performance at the house, after which she asks Jun-tae to hold on tight until the next meeting where his chances of becoming the vice president are high. He assures her that nothing can go wrong and has another scandal about Taeyong ready to go. During this time, a paparazzo is following Seung-chin into a hotel, which he enters with a woman in a high-profile way. He continues to follow him and gets some good shots until Seung-chin enters a room. However, things inside the room are different, and the woman accompanying him is none other than Monkey. A meeting is being held there, and it is revealed that Seung-chin is the CEO of a rising company, MetLab. He has been raising his power with this company and gives the orders for the next plans before leaving. After he leaves, Monkey reveals that the years he stayed in the US were a struggle for his life. The scars on Seung-chin's body are revealed when he recollects the time he was in the hospital when he handed his golden spoon to Yo-jin. The next day, Taeyong receives a notice that the company he worked for as a part-timer has sued him along with Joo-hee and the others. He goes to the gathering of some of the Amicus members and is bullied by them until they finally decide to take back the lawsuit. However, while leaving, it is revealed to him that the reason they gave up on the case was because of Hong Taeyong. This crushes his pride as he drinks away until Seung-chin arrives. There, Taeyong tells him that even after listening to Seung-chin's words and following them, his efforts helped him in no way because, in the end, it was the money that helped him. Joo-hee too arrives there and points out what Seung-chin has done for them. However, her grudge against him does not reduce because of this, and she continues to accuse him of her father's death. The scene then moves to his room where Yo-jin questions him about helping Joo-hee because of his feelings for her. He denies these accusations and kisses her to prove that his feelings for Joo-hee no longer exist. However, he cannot help recollecting his memories with Joo-hee after Yo-jin leaves, but puts on a stern force on himself to deny those feelings. Next day, when a drug scandal with Seung-chin in the middle breaks out and the share price of Dacian Group sees a drastic fall. Right then, Seung-chin steps in to buy as many shares as he can and puts his plan into action. Hyun-doo is shocked by what is happening until he remembers his conversation with his son, which makes him burst out into laughter. Elsewhere, Taeyong finds the book where Seung-chin has written everything about the golden spoon, which shocks him while Seung-chin enters the shareholders meeting and reveals Jun-tae's corruption to everyone. He then reveals that he is the CEO of MetLab and has earned the qualifications of being in this meeting. Jun-tae is scrutinized by the members, who now discuss his dismissal, but he is not one to give up and is ready to fight back. He contacts Joo-hee and reveals information about Taeyong's blazer, which has her father's blood on it. She then goes to Seung-chin and requests an interview so that she can get information from him. Seung-chin rejects Joo-hee's interview, which pleases Yo-jin, who is standing behind him. She tells Joo-hee to stay away from him, and the two leave. Elsewhere, Taeyong is out drinking with his friend, who complains about Hong Taeyong, while Lee Cheol finds the notes about the golden spoon and thinks of it as a story his son made because of their poverty. The next day, Hyun-doo warns Jun-tae while telling him to return the slush fund amount, while Young-sin accepts Joo-hee's request of interviewing Seung-chin. After her discussion with Young-shin, Joo-hee sneaks into Seung-chin's room to look for the blazer mentioned by Jun-tae but finds a locker in the room which requires a password. Elsewhere, Seung-chin makes his way to Yo-jin's house as the meeting between the parents takes place before their wedding. Young-sin tries to insult Yo-jin during the meal. However, Seung-chin defends her only to call it support for his business partner, which angers Yo-jin. Yo-jin then remembers the last rule of the golden spoon, according to which any other individual who eats with the owner's spoon will receive the memories of the owner. With this as her hidden card, she waits until Seung-chin makes her lose her patience before using it. Here, Young-sin tells Seung-chin about Joo-hee's request to interview him and decides to drop by her office to discuss this matter. Joo-hee is surprised when Seung-chin agrees to the interview and makes the necessary preparations. However, looking at the way Taeyong is treated at the office reminds him of his truth, which dampens his mood. Later, Jun-tae arrives at Amicus and finds out that the attitude of the members there is different from before, which makes him lose his temper by smashing a glass on his friend's head. While leaving, he dashes into Seung-chin, who reveals the truth about the incident that took place in the US while he was in school. Jun-tae is in a mess, and Young-sin comes to take him back, but he cannot hold himself back and asks her to kill Taeyong. She is unable to bear the situation that Jun-tae has ended up in and barges into Hyun-doo's office while he is in a meeting. She tells him to give Jun-tae another chance, but he disagrees and reveals that he is aware of Jun-tae being her son and not her brother. This shocks Young-sin, and she is no longer able to fight against Hyun-doo. On the other hand, Seung-chin goes through the pictures drawn by the last witness of the incident, which shows a man holding a gun with a smiley t-shirt and a smile on his face. It is because he found out about Jun-tae's nickname that he discovered that he is the one behind the massacre in the US. Monkey then tells him that Joo-hee has been contacting the people related to her father's case, which surprises him as he thinks of ways to keep her away from all this. He then puts back the documents in his locker, but while he is inputting the password, Joo-hee sees it with the camera she has hidden in his room earlier. The next day, Yo-jin finds out that Seung-chin has accepted the interview and barges into Joo-hee's workplace and pulls on her hair. She tells her to stay away from him, but Joo-hee is not one to let herself be hurt and counterattacks Yo-jin. She tells her that it is all work and nothing else before leaving. Seung-chin then gives the interview, after which he is invited by Joo-hee for dinner. He accepts the invite while Taeyong hears about this from other workers and gets anxious about Joo-hee's closeness with Seung-chin. On the other hand, Joo-hee and Seung-chin are at the tteokbokki place where she shows him a picture of his back that she took on the day of her maid's accident. He denies it being him, which angers her into leaving, but he runs behind her and tells her that it is him, but he is not the one behind her father's death. She once again shows her determination to find the truth and leaves only to find Taeyong waiting for her at her house. While the two share a drink and memories of the past, Taeyong reveals his feelings that he hasn't been able to let go of. He tells her to wait to give a reply and leaves, but he finds himself at the place where the old lady sits. However, he is unable to see her, which puzzles her as well. Elsewhere, Seung-chin sneakily finds out the things that his parents want to eat and prepares a surprise for them. The next day, the news of Dashin Group going for a physical division breaks out, which surprises everyone while Seung-chin shows that he is openly against this decision. Monkey is worried for him, but he lets him know that his real opponent is none other than Hyun-doo himself. Hyun-doo has seen Seung-chin's statement and asks for him to be brought to his office, but finds out that he has rejected the request for an important meeting, which piques his interest. On the other hand, Seung-chin appears at Alex Boo's restaurant with Taeyong and is surprised to know that they know each other. He then moves to a private dining area where he hands over a job to Taeyong and tells him to take it up for his parents. Taeyong rejects it, but Seung-chin insists when a knock stops their discussion. Seung-chin thinks that it is his parents who have finally arrived but sees Hyun-doo outside, which surprises him. His parents arrive later, and an awkward dinner begins when, looking at Lee Cheol and Seung-chin's similar dining habits, the rest are speechless. However, they let go of this when Hyun-doo suddenly insults the family out of the blue. The dinner soon comes to an end in an awkward manner while Lee Cheol and Sun Hai gift Taeyong drawing materials to let him continue with his passion after they reach home. Elsewhere, Seung-chin complains to Hyun-doo about his behavior during dinner, and the latter tells him that he doesn't want his son to be stuck in pity. Seung-chin then tells him that he is envious of that family where Taeyong is receiving everything, which pulls him towards them. This is heard by Young-sin, who then assures Hyun-do that she will put in more effort after Seung-chin leaves. Hyun-do tells her he knows that she is doing this so that he would keep her secret and assures her that he has no interest in revealing this. Next day, when the interview is brought to the Hong family home, and Yo-jin finds out about this, which makes her call Taeyong for a meal. Elsewhere, Joo-hee sneaks into Seung-chin's room during the interview and opens the locker inside, where she finds the books with the drawings of the witness. She also finds material related to her father's death, which is similar to her own. But what surprises her is the book that lies in a corner, which is similar to the one she gave to Seung-chin. Elsewhere, Taeyong is determined to give up on his dream to earn money like Seung-chin when he receives the call from Yo-jin. Upon going there, Yo-jin hands him the spoon that belongs to Seung-chin and asks him to begin. On the other hand, Seung-chin arrives behind Joo-hee and she questions him about the documents and the book that she had given to Lee Seung-chin, to which he tells her that he had just picked it up. He then shifts the topic by asking about the case she had opened, and she spills the beans. Elsewhere, Yo-jin keeps annoying Taeyong before he can eat, which puts him off and he leaves. She then sends a message to Seung-chin while mentioning a rule of the golden spoon, which has him rushing to her. She then tells him about the rule and warns him not to go against her, or else she will make sure that everyone knows his truth. Elsewhere, Joo-hee soon makes the connection between the things she saw in Seung-chin's locker and finds out that Jun-tae may be the real culprit in her father's murder. Right then, Taeyong arrives to meet her and sees the documents which led to him finding out about Joo-hee's investigation all these years. He then makes his way to Seung-chin and tells him that he will help the two in investigating the murder. However, if he is the culprit, then Taeyong will make sure to not let him go. He then leaves to go back home, but right then he comes across the roads near the ark, which seems familiar to the drawing in the books. He looks around to find the grandma and sees no one there, which leads to more confusion on his side when he remembers that Seung-chin had a similar spoon which he fought him for. The next day, Seung-chin apologizes to Hyun-do for his behavior, but the latter lets go of the matter by letting him know that he respects his son's feelings. This makes Seung-chin suspicious, but he doesn't say anything, while on the other hand, Hyun-do has something big planned for the Lee family. The scene shifts to the Hong house where Lee Cheol and his wife have come to make a delivery, and are thanked by young Sim. She sends a bundle of gifts back with them, but while leaving, Lee Cheol's eyes fall on a one-of-a-kind drawing set which astonishes him. On the other hand, Hyun-do meets up with Taeyong in his office and asks him to join Dashin group. Taeyong doesn't say anything about it but instead asks about the reason why Seung-chin left for the US 10 years back. Hyun-do gives him a roundabout answer and doesn't say much. However, he is shocked by this question. Taeyong then leaves the office but cannot help imagining himself as Hyun-do's son. Elsewhere, Joo-hee meets up with Jun-tae and tries to sneakily get him to give out some important information, but he soon catches onto it and holds her tight by her hair. Right then, Seung-chin arrives and saves her as the two soon escape from the scene. The two make their way to Joo-hee's house and are soon joined by Taeyong. Seung-chin then reveals the information that he has gathered until now and lets them know that Jun-tae should be the real culprit behind the murder. He tells them to investigate the burner phone, which was the last call received by President Na, and find more clues related to it. He then later leaves to give Yo-jin a surprise visit at her company before going off to meet one of Jun-tae's old lackeys. There he gets the confession that Jun-tae had indeed called President Na through a burner phone before going crazy with anger. On the other hand, Joo-hee receives the CCTV and dashcam footage related to another case that happened near her old house and is ready to go through them all. However, what she doesn't know is that Jun-tae has broken into her house and has seen the evidence that she had collected, which enrages him. As soon as Joo-hee arrives outside her house, he wants to kill her but stops when she receives a phone call from Seung-chin. Seung-chin soon arrives, and the two start going through the videos until he accidentally falls asleep there. The next day, Joo-hee wakes up to the sound of Seung-chin preparing breakfast, and soon Taeyong unexpectedly joins the two. Taeyong asks Seung-chin about the golden spoon, which triggers the latter, and he rushes out of the house. The two are left behind, and Joo-hee once again starts going through the videos, and soon she finds a piece of evidence that points towards Jun-tae. The two are excited and soon make their way to the police station. Hyun-do is alerted of this and makes a plan to use this situation and soon arrives at Jun-tae's house. Elsewhere, Joo-hee is happy about finally getting the chance to reopen the case when she notices a weird woman carrying a bag that is similar to the one she lost 10 years back. She then tries to question the woman but ends up in a chase that is nothing but futile. On the other hand, Taeyong finds more connections to something abnormal happening around him, which makes him sure that something is not right. He then goes off to meet Seung-chin at his office. Right then, Yo-jin and Joo-hee too arrive outside his office and overhear Taeyong questioning Seung-chin. Yojin soon steps in and tells Taeyong that he is wrong and that he is being delusional, which shocks him as he rushes out. Joo-hee follows him while Seung-chin is surprised by everything that happened. All of this was happening because Taeyong had used Seung-chin's spoon, giving him the memories that Seung-chin holds. Well, they are soon interrupted by the news of Jun-tae being arrested for the murder of President Na. Elsewhere, Taeyong finally sees the weird grandma and a golden spoon that she is selling, while Seung-chin and Joo-hee resume their friendship, which has crossed the hurdle of President Na's murder. Elsewhere, Taeyong buys the golden spoon and is ready to test it out the very next day when he goes to the Hong family house to make his delivery. On the other hand, Seung-chin once again impresses the shareholders and later thanks Hyun-doo for his help with Jun-tae's case. Joo-hee is busy editing the special video when Taeyong drops by for a visit and tells her that they will only remain friends from now on because he is ready to go back to his life. Elsewhere, Yo-jin finds out that her father had gone to a shaman who told him that his daughter had died more than a decade ago, which is actually true. President Oh, on the other hand, is spreading the talisman he has gotten but soon finds pictures of Jeong Nora's father, which confuses him. Yo-jin soon arrives, and he behaves normally before leaving the room with the pictures as he starts investigating the reason these pictures were in her room. Later that evening, Taeyong visits Seung-chin and scares him by subtly revealing that he is aware of what the golden spoon can do. Seung-chin visits the church he had gone to with Joo-hee to find some peace when Joo-hee pops out of nowhere and scares him. He takes her home where she confesses that she feels like the current Seung-chin is not the one she fell in love with. Elsewhere, Hyun-doo's secretary reveals how his boss selects the gifts according to what the person wants but lacks in order to make sure that he always strikes it right. He has done the same to Lee Cheol, who ignores his inability to draw by blaming his tools after seeing the drawing set at the home house. Seung-chin tells the housekeeper to make sure that no outsider eats from their house, especially pointing to Taeyong before leaving. However, the disheveled young Sin does exactly that and invites Taeyong for a meal. On the other hand, Seung-chin meets Joo-hee to return her cell phone and tells her that the Seung-chin she fell in love with was a jerk. This angers Joo-hee, and she goes back to her office, but Seung-chin follows her after she leaves behind her things again. He then tells her not to smile when she is in a problematic situation, which shocks her as she remembers that these words were once told to her by Lee Seung-chin. Back in the home house, Hyun-doo arrives while Taeyong is eating, and the latter soon wraps up before leaving. Young Sin reveals her anger towards what is going on while Hyun-doo reminds her of her responsibilities as Jun-tae's mother. Seung-chin soon finds out that Taeyong came to his house for a meal and tries to contact him but to no avail. So he makes his way to the Lee family house where he feels a wave of nostalgia, especially when his mother brings him a bowl of his favorite dumpling soup. However, before he can eat, Taeyong comes back and Seung-chin decides to leave from there, but not before inviting Taeyong for a meal. The next day, Joo-hee gets to know that the woman with her bag has been caught, and she rushes there to find that while the bag is there, the money is all gone. She asks the woman about this, but the latter keeps repeating that she is the district councilor of Gangnam whose housekeeper used a golden spoon to take over her life. This shocks Joo-hee as she is reminded of Taeyong's words to Seung-chin and inquires more about the golden spoon. Elsewhere, Seung-chin and Taeyong sit for a meal, and the former keeps pushing the latter to eat while reminding him of the consequences of the swap. However, deep inside he is also pleased as he remembers swapping Taeyong's spoon with a fake. Right when Taeyong is about to eat there for the third time, he stops and does not go for the swap, which shocks Seung-chin. He tries to stop Taeyong, but the latter pushes him and tells him that he will not swap his parents for anything in the world, which is like a shock for Seung-chin, who later gets drunk at a bar. Yo-jin arrives to witness Seung-chin's condition and cannot help but sympathize with him. Things soon get heated between them as they kiss and move to a hotel room. However, Seung-chin soon realizes what he is doing and stops before rushing out. He soon arrives at Joo-hee's house, who is on her way back while thinking about the story of the golden spoon. She is startled to see him but then asks if he is Lee Seung-chin, which he denies before leaving. The next day, President Oh has received some shocking information while Jun-tae informs his friends of the storm that is to come. Finally being Seung-chin's and Taeyong's birthdays when the former sees the latter at his house and is startled because of the rule that can make them swap on their birthday. He tries to push Taeyong out of the house when Hyun-doo arrives and behaves normally because the swap hasn't happened. This shocks Seung-chin as he thinks that maybe the rule is not true until his parents arrive and address him as Lee Seung-chin.